Hello and welcome. Thanks for taking some time out of your day to join us for today's Demand Creator webinar series. Today, we're going to be talking about something that we're seeing as really gaining significantly in its level of importance. We're going to be talking about strategies to increase the success rate from lead generation to sales. So this program today is going to be focused more around what you can do after the leads are generated to increase the traction, increase the engagement, and translate that more into sales so that you're able to get significantly greater yield from the lead generation efforts that you have. Certainly some of the things we're going to talk about will probably have some impact to help you increase lead generation. If you're looking for key ideas around lead generation, you can send us an email. We've got a number of resources to support there. If you go to our Demand Generation University page at imaginellc.com/videos, you will be able to look up double your pipeline. And that really gets into, and I think we also have a double your lead generation. We've got two programs around there that really get into how to generate more leads, generate more high quality opportunities and things like that. So let me tell you where everything came from that I'm about to share with you. We are big believers here at Imagine of in the field research backed with a lot of other components of study and data. And so the findings that I'm going to share with you today are based on 5 studies that we consumed around lead generation and demand generation. These studies are from Corporate Executive Board, CEB, now called Gartner CEB, Forrester, Serious Decisions, Aberdeen, were the key components, were the key research firms whose lead and demand generation studies that we dug deep into. But like I said, we're fans of in the field work. And so we took those studies to establish some hypotheses, and then we dug deep in a review of more than 200 companies that we looked at firsthand to really identify what are the key issues, what are the key drivers of success from lead generation to sale. That's what we were looking for. We're identifying the gap between lead generation and sales results. And when we talk about sales results, what we're looking at here is high quality sales at higher velocity. More on that in a moment. I want to emphasize what we're looking for here. We were not looking to identify best practices. And to be clear, I'm a fan of best practices. I believe you can learn a lot from best practices. But the problem with best practices is best practices, if you're looking at it through the lens of best practices, you're looking to see what's working at a lot of places. But what you're not necessarily doing is identifying those things that are working at a lot of places. Are they also being done at places that aren't experiencing success? You see, what we wanted to dig really deep into was to understand what are the things that the successful companies are doing that the companies that aren't experiencing that success are not doing, and vice versa. What are the successful ones not doing that the ones that aren't experiencing that level of success are doing? We're looking for the delta. We're looking for the driver of results. And so that's where these findings come from. Now, let's talk about making high quality sales at higher velocity. Because one of the things that we're seeing today, we're seeing a lot of companies increase sales, yet for every sale they're increasing, they're not really getting that much stronger. And in many cases, we're actually seeing the strength, the underlying stability of the company almost atrophy as they're generating more sales. And one of the reasons for that is, in the research that we did, what we found is that the percentage of non-high quality sales is increasing. And so we're making sales. We may even be making more sales than we did before. We may be seeing revenue generating. As a matter of fact, in today's economy, most companies are experiencing increased revenue generation. But are they getting stronger? And so what we wanted to do, like I said, was really dig in deep to identify what are the keys to making high quality sales at higher velocity. So let's define what is a high quality sale. And we chose 4 attributes to define a high quality sale. The first attribute is it's got to be predictable. There's got to be a level of predictability to it. We can manage it. We can plan our resources. We can forecast it. The second component is that it's repeatable. I don't care if you can make that sale once. I want to know, can you do it again and again? Can you do it across the sales organization? It needs to be sustainable. And the last component that I think most people would certainly agree with is it's got to be what we're going to call a full value sale. You've got to be getting the level of offering that you want to get. We're seeing increasingly companies are making sales that they're coming in with a recommendation here and then actually delivering below what that initial recommendation was. And or discounting, lowering their price, really negatively impacting their margin. Right. And so that's what we're looking at. What do we have to do to generate high quality sales that meet these 4 components? Now, I got to tell you, what we learned is that a lot of the best practices that they are teaching, I still want to know who they are, but a lot of the best practices that they're teaching, well, they don't work anymore. And candidly, I'm not sure they ever really did work as well as we were often led to believe. Now, again, what we're looking at here is what are the practices that lead to the outcomes that we're talking about. Consider this research from Serious Decisions. 98% of marketing qualified leads never result in closed business. 64% of salespeople's field time is wasted, if I may use that term, on administrative responsibilities. And 54% or more of sales reps aren't going to hit quota this year. If you look at sales organizations and demand generation organizations, for the most part, we have hit a brick wall. We are having to work harder. We're having to put more pull. We're having to rev that engine up. And to the level that we're revving the engine up, we're not getting that multiple out the other end. You see, what we've identified is this condition that we refer to as bulging funnel disorder. Right? What we're seeing in databases across industries is databases are bigger than they've ever been before. By and large, lead generation isn't particularly hard today. I'm not saying it's easy, but I am saying if the problem that you're experiencing is generating more leads, generating more good targets to pursue, well, it's a relatively easy problem to solve. And I will tell you, if you're having that problem, you better get on fixing it soon because it's not going to stay this easy for that long. Bulging funnel disorder occurs when we're generating those leads, but we're not generating real engagement. And so we really haven't changed the structure of our funnel. We haven't changed the structure of our throughput, of our ability to generate higher velocity, higher volume of quality sales with greater predictability and less effort. What we're really being forced to do is to kind of bail out this drain that's getting clogged, right? And there's 3 core reasons that we're seeing this bulging funnel disorder. We also call it lead activation syndrome. There's 3 key causes for why we're seeing this lead activation syndrome. Those 3 causes are, first, organic, the traditional strategies, the best practice strategies, they're getting expensive. You see, we started doing a lot of these lead generation strategies because, well, we were supposed to be able to outthink instead of outspend our competition. But all of a sudden, they're not as low cost as they appear. The second cause is the role of intent, which I'm going to talk about. And the third is, and this might surprise you, it's a focus on thought leadership. We've been obsessed about thought leadership. And in so many ways, the things that we're doing that we think we're supposed to be doing, they're actually creating the problem in generating higher volume opportunities and generating high value opportunities. You see, when I first started doing inbound marketing and demand generation, the promise was this was a low cost strategy. We would be able to generate multiples of lead volumes at a fraction of the cost of traditional strategies. And you know, to some degree that was true, but one of the reasons it was true was because no one else was doing it. It was brand new. Right now, to some degree, everybody is doing it. I mean, I still remember when I wrote a blog post and I said, blogging is no longer optional. And I had like 4 or 5 of my clients call me up and say, really? You're making that call like it's no longer a choice? And the funny thing is, we went from blogging being something that only leading people do, to me making the call that blogging is no longer optional, to blogging being passé, to now blogging is kind of optional again for some people. Blogging is certainly not the end-all be-all strategy that it used to be. And the reason is because with all that noise and everything that's been going on, that promise of lead generation isn't translating to revenue. And so we've dramatically lowered our cost per lead, but we haven't necessarily lowered our cost per action. We haven't necessarily lowered our cost per opportunity. And we haven't put ourselves in that position to be successful. And I think the vast majority of people that have been involved in demand generation for more than 5 to 7 years will say it is harder today than it's ever been. Now, some of this is being caused by the next 2 things that I'm going to talk about. What's happening in the business world today is that there's an obsession for intent, right? And we've all gotten obsessed about intent. We want, and who wouldn't, right? We want to find the people who want to buy. Who are the people that want to buy from us? Let's find them. Let's get them talking. Let's catch them. And, you know, that was the promise of search engine optimization. That's the promise of content. That's the promise of sales development. All these things we're going to find the people who are looking for you. They just don't know that you're there. Right. And when we start, when we're first putting together our outreach programs, we actually get very successful in identifying people with high levels of intent. Now, we do that for 2 reasons. First off, high intent people tend to be the ones that are the lowest hanging fruit. They're the most likely to respond, right? It's a lot easier to find the people that are looking for it. The second reason is that in a lot of cases, our demand generation efforts, well, they're not that good. And so by the time someone finds us and gets to that point where they're talking to us, well, there's a very high level of intent because, I mean, candidly, they had to do work to get to the point to be able to talk to us. Then we start generating content. We start putting forms, chat. We create, we do outbound programs. We do all these different things to identify more opportunities on the basis of when we find somebody that we can talk to, we do really well, right? And that's typically true because we have a very high level of intent in the pool that we're dealing with, right? And it's a lot easier to sell to somebody who's looking to buy than it is to somebody who's not, right? But as we implement demand generation strategies, as we get better at what we do, the problem is our high intent yield decreases, and it decreases for 2 reasons. Number 1, intent is highly structural. Today, there's a certain number of people at a stage that are looking for something that you do, that are at a point where they are ready to do something. And you know what? Today, there's nothing you can do that's going to change that. You can't create intent in the short term. Now, over the long term, you can influence it. You can't create it, but you can influence it, right? And so because of that, as we get better and we start generating more leads, by definition, the yield of high intent leads is going to come down because there's a cap to how many high intent leads there are. And so as we begin to focus, and by the way, there's nothing wrong with this, but as we begin to focus on increasing our lead generation to be successful, we have to do things that apply more to people who don't necessarily have high intent. And so we reinforce that loop, and before we know it, we're generating far more lead volume. Our databases are bigger than ever, but only a small percentage. What started off as a bulk of is now a small percentage of that are actually in a high intent mode. And the problem is we treat them all the same way. We treat them all like they're ready to buy. Our messaging, our outreach, our conversation, our strategy. And what's happened is the customers now push back. That's the reason for the self journey. That's the reason for the 57%. We're going to be coming out with a blog in the next day or two off of a research study that we just saw. It just came out that actually shows it is a myth that companies don't want to talk to you early in the sales cycle. The problem is they don't want to talk to you about what you want to talk to them about. Right? If we're talking to low intent people about buying from us, if we're putting that signal out, they're not going to respond. And as a matter of fact, they're going to get turned off. And what we're doing actually in developing that database, because we aren't contextually working with them, we're actually turning them off. We're actually making it harder for us to break through. You know, in many cases, it's unfortunate. There are companies that would be in a better position if they had less effective lead generation programs in place, because they'd be better off if someone just wasn't aware of them than being treated the way they're being treated. Right. And this next one is going to hit probably pretty close to home for a lot of you that are listening and watching this. We have been focused on thought leadership. And thought leadership is causing a large part of the problem. So think about it. We're generating content. We're generating videos. We're generating ideas. We're teaching our salespeople to present. We're running better demos. We're having better conversations. All of this is content. All of this is around the idea of we want to generate thought leadership. Let's define what thought leadership content is. Right? I think you'll agree with me that these 5 components define what we think of as good content in our effort to generate thought leadership. Content that is well written, authoritative, interesting, easy to understand, and represents a smart or expert perspective. Hey, we want people to see our stuff, see us, and think, these guys know what they're doing. Hey, they're smart. Hey, with the idea that when they realize they need something, then they'll want to work with us. But it makes sense. It maybe even should work, but it doesn't. Right? Why? You see, thought leadership doesn't cause people to change course. Thought leadership may lead to more traffic. It may lead to more time per page. It may lead to more downloads. But if you are not influencing them to think differently, then they're not going to change course or speed. And if they don't change course or speed, then if they're not buying from you, they are probably not going to buy from you. This is some research done from CEB, taking a look at the type of content that drives change. What is the content that drives a change of course and or speed on the part of the buyer? And look, the items that we've identified as thought leadership, the elements that are defining effective content, are either negatively correlated to success or not correlated. When we look at what type of content actually drives change, it's a very different type of content. Something I'm going to talk about in a minute. Customers are most likely to reset their buying criteria. They're most likely to think about doing something differently. They're most likely to change course or speed. They're most likely to interact and engage with you meaningfully when confronted with surprising information about their business. Right, we've got to stop thinking content. We've got to start thinking insights. More on that in a minute. Has to be well written. Has to be authoritative. But we've got to teach them something. We've got to deliver a teaching point of view. Artie, that's the problem. That's why we're in the mess that we're in. That's why we're in the quicksand that we're in. Let's talk about what do we got to do to get out of it. Let's talk about lead activation. First question, we're gonna make it a chat answer. This is for the honor of getting it right. Someone tell me, what do these 4 people have in common? And when I ran this earlier, when I asked this question of a different audience, I realized it was a good thing that I got Joe Gibbs in there, because otherwise someone might just say, who are three guys named Bill? All right, anybody want to take a guess? Put it in the chat pane. What do these four people have in common? Artie, I'll tell you. Multiple Super Bowl wins. Congratulations, John Naylor. That is key. But they not only won multiple Super Bowls, they won multiple Super Bowls with highly different personnel. You see, they didn't win it just one way. What you're going to find is that these four coaches, as well as anybody in any discipline, adjusted. They figured out how to play the game for them to win. And you see, that's what strategy is all about. One of the problems of best practices is we keep trying to copy what other people are doing, not understanding what is the situation that those other people are in. And so what you're going to see in the 5 strategies that I'm about to share with you are these strategies, how you implement them, are highly contextual to your situation. My goal is to start a new hashtag, context at scale. We've got to start thinking about, how do we deliver context at scale? How do we do that? 5 strategies. Number 1, we've got to generate engagement before the buyer has intent. I'm not saying completely ignore intent, but if we are waiting for intent to emerge before they're aware of us, we are not going to be in a position to make a high quality sale. We need to generate insights, not thought leadership. We need to align with the buyer's real journey. We must take an account-based focus. Now, you can call it account-based marketing. You can call it account-based sales. You can call it account-based, whatever you want to call it, account-based, right? But I'm not talking about advertising here. I'm talking about fundamentally in the B2B space, we need to be thinking about account structures. We need to be thinking about account cohorts so that we are taking the right type of action with the right type of organization in alignment with the right type of result that we're looking for at the right time. We need to take an account-based focus. And then to make that all work, we've got to build the engine to make it happen. Let's get into the strategies. We like to make things really difficult in my business, in the consulting business, in the growth advisory business, things like, just look at brand, right? Something relatively simple. We're going to make it really complicated so that we can go out into the world and, well, candidly charge you a lot of money to put you through, I don't know, a branding exercise or something. So we like to make growth feel like it's this mystery, but it's not a mystery, right? There's actually very key scientific principles that support the whole idea of growth, right? Growth is about elevation, and all we have to do is study physics to understand the key component of growth. Think of growth as lift, right? If you understand the principle of lift, all it says is that the velocity above the wing is going at a faster rate than the velocity below the wing. You create a vacuum, it lifts the plane into the air. Same thing is true in growing a business. You have to generate higher velocity above the wing than you generate below the wing. Well, okay, Doug, that sounds really good. And if I'm flying a plane, I can actually see the wing. I can run tests. I know what's going on. What's the wing in this situation? Well, the wing in this situation is buying intent. If the velocity of our actions, if the velocity of our engagement after intent is greater than the velocity before intent, well, we're creating negative lift. Right? That's why SEO isn't working for you anymore. Because increasingly what the search algorithms are looking for is they're looking to identify intent. But if I already know that I want something, well, I've already begun my journey. Right? And now, what real value are you going to bring? I'm probably already down the line to identifying the specs or defining the specs, establishing my decision criteria, figuring out on my own what we need. And by the time we get to below the wing, most of the value that you can create today, it's gone. You need to generate that velocity above the wing. That means you have to focus on demand generation. Demand generation is all about generating attention and engagement. And your level of customer acquisition, your customer acquisition success, your sales process, it's going to be limited by the growth of your demand generation. Right? You probably have to grow demand generation at about twice or more the rate that you want to grow your customer acquisition at. And then obviously your revenue acquisition process is going to be limited by your customer acquisition. Right? We need to generate more velocity up here to create that lift that will enable us to sell more, faster, and better. The problem is because we're all looking for the people who are already ready to buy, we're all more and more late stage focused. We're creating this negative lift, which is why we're on this treadmill where we have no choice but to run faster. We have no choice but to discount. We have no choice but to concede, because the places where we can actually establish our relevance, our significance, and our uniqueness, they're gone by the time we're relevant. You see, if you think about a sale, there's two key criteria. Now, there's really three. Fit's not on here, but I'm assuming fit, right? There's got to be engagement and intent. Here's the question. When do you generate each one? If you generate engagement after intent, you're playing demand capture, right? I'm not telling you you can't grow a business at demand capture. I'm just telling you it's going to be an expensive journey. That doesn't mean it's not going to be a profitable journey, but it does mean you better be ready to spend some real money, and you're going to spend that money way up front, right? That's why companies are raising money, is so that they can generate that engagement. They can fight that game at that place. The place where we generate that asset, the place where we can actually generate greater throughput, where we can really drive greater velocity at a faster rate than the money that we're spending, is if we generate engagement before intent, if we play demand generation. Now, if we want to do that, we've got to move beyond the idea of thought leadership. Now, if you think about thought leadership, to differentiate it to insights, thought leadership is all about generating content where the takeaway from the person who reads it is, wow, they're smart. Right? Nothing wrong with that. Unless you're looking to generate higher volume of quality sales. But I say that somewhat tongue-in-cheek. Thought leadership is the precursor. Yeah, you have to be smart. But remember, just because you're smart doesn't mean I'm going to do something different. As a matter of fact, just because you're smart, it has nothing to do with the likelihood of me doing something different. The takeaway when you deliver an insight is somebody reads it, someone reads it, hears it, is exposed to it, and their takeaway is, wow, I'm wrong. You see, insights are frame breaking. Insights are designed to upend the status quo. It's all about politely and let me emphasize, explicitly teaching the customer that they're wrong about something and what it's costing them. Now it's not the old school stereotypical insurance sale. No, it's a professional, polite, respectful, caring. In management, we call it radical candor, right? It's about being candid, teaching your market where they're wrong. And here's the thing, by the way, if they're not wrong, then you're probably providing a commodity, and they probably shouldn't value you at the way you value yourself. You see, implicit in every good insight is, hey, you're doing it wrong. So where can you find your insights? Well, we have a video that goes all into how to define insights. I'm going to tell you how to get access to that video at the end of our presentation. But this is not just a bait and switch for you. I'm going to give you an answer. I'm going to give you the key. Here's the place to start. Think about what are the 1 to 3 things that your customers think they know that ain't so. You know, it was Mark Twain who said, it's not what you don't know that hurts you. It's what you think you know that ain't so. Well, what are the 1 to 3 things that matter that your around what you do that your customers think they know that ain't so. Match that with then what are the things that you know that are both counterintuitive and impactful. You see, explicit in every good insight is a counterintuitive idea. It's frame breaking. Right? What do you know that's counterintuitive and impactful that connects to the 1 to 3 things that your customers think they know that ain't so? That's where your insights lie. Teach that. Build off of that. That's where you'll drive results. All right. The next thing to generate context at scale to activate your leads is you've got to align with the real buyer's journey. Hurdle number 1, attention. Hurdle number 2, intent. Hurdle number 3, selection. Hurdle number 4, satisfaction. Insights are stimulated and seeded. Your job is to generate epiphanies. Your job is to realize in the pre-attention phase, I being the customer, I'm not looking for what it is that you're doing. I'm not even thinking about your solution. I'm thinking about my business. This is where you seed and stimulate your insight to generate that aha moment, to turn it from this subconscious passive thought to what I like to call the oh shit moment. Then you begin to really influence how the issues are defined, right? So that you're defining the decision criteria. In the second stage, you're teaching them how to understand the problem. You're teaching them how to craft a solution, and you're teaching them how to solve the problem, right? You're not waiting for them to say, I want to buy from you, to talk about the solution and the requirements, because those 3 things are all happening at the same time. That's what triggers intent. Now, here's what I'm going to tell you. If you're not present in this phase, you can compete here, but you better be really clear on what is generating that attention and how is it being framed, because the way humans view everything in this stage is going to be influenced by what led them to generate that conscious awareness, that attention. They're not even going to know why they look at something the way they look at it. That epiphany phase influences the consideration phase, and the consideration phase influences the decision phase. You see, the problem with thought leadership is I take the thought leadership and then I apply it on the journey that I'm on. But if the journey I'm on, it doesn't already involve buying from you in a high quality way, your thought leadership isn't going to change it. And further, which we talk about in some other programs, we don't have time to talk about it in this session today. When you do stimulate that interest, the problem is you stimulate it with 1 or 2 influencers in an organization, and you get stuck in the consensus. You get stuck in competing priorities, and inertia prevents you from making the sale. You see, when you're delivering your message, your content, your conversation, you have to understand that you're really making 3 sales. The first sale, which is oftentimes a pre-awareness sale, is defining what the problem is. The second sale is defining what's the best way to solve the problem. The third sale is who do I want to solve the problem with, right? With more people involved in whether or not a company is going to move forward, we've got to adjust to that. And the thing is, we lose our sales. The biggest place where we're losing sales in the B2B environment is actually from the problem definition into the solution identification. This is where you're losing sales. But most of your messaging, most of your lead generation and sales strategies are geared to initial interest. Hey, let's get them. And then very late stage. We're not even there. We're not even talking about the things that are causing the sale to actually get lost. And as a result of that, we're not able to build the predictability into our system. You see, I want you to start manufacturing revenue. I want you to think about how do we generate customers? How do we generate revenue in the same way you would think about it if you were responsible for manufacturing, right? The first part of our manufacturing chain is to generate demand, right? Awareness, attention, and engagement. Engagement is the fuel of everything else that happens. Then our sales process kicks in, aligned with that engagement, and our customer success strategy kicks in. We're relevant before the point of intent, influencing how that intent occurs, that puts us in a most favored nation status, that gives us greater insight, that gives us greater line of sight, that gives us greater influence, so that those that fit we're able to move forward with. You see, we need to get out of the Alec Baldwin coffee is for closers mindset and really start thinking about things like a farmer, right? And I say that purposely because we all think hunter-farmer. Oh, I want the hunter. Now, I'm talking about something well beyond just hunter-farmer, but we've got to start thinking about market development. You see, what's happening when you look at the strategies from lead generation through lead execution, we're pushing more and more to later and later in the sales process, right? Everyone's running to try to find the decision areas. But if we haven't influenced this area, then we're going to be stuck responding to their needs. We're not going to be driving the situation. This is the opportunity to establish our relevance. This is the opportunity to establish our value. If we're not influencing here and we're trying to establish our value here, we are working from a very weak position. And when you understand the real journey, you're able to execute contextual plays at scale. And then further, stop treating every account the same way. You need to realize you have a strategic pipeline and a transactional pipeline. You got high value strategic targets, what we like to call the high value velocity targets, and the core targets. Now, this is just an example of a typical separation and cohort selection that we take, right? There's a lot of different ways to skin a cat. I'm not saying this applies to everybody, but this is an example of a real life account-based structure, right? That then allows us to take the right actions with the right people in the right way, measure the right things to drive the results forward. Now, that's all in play. And if you're like most companies at this point, you've got good tech, you've got good content, and you've got good people. But here's the problem. Tech, content, and people, they are absolutely necessary, but they are not enough to get the job done. You need to be thinking about what is the engine that is driving your growth. What is the engine that's driving your revenue acquisition machine? Or, in the words of General Omar Bradley, I should say, amateurs talk strategy, professionals talk logistics. And I'm telling you, I've been in the companies. I see what's happening. We talk strategy. But we spend very little time actually talking about the logistics. Here's my question to you. What's powering your sales engine? And I've seen it. I've done the assessments for all too many of you. Everything's okay. You just got a hamster wheel powering your engine instead of a rocket engine, right? You just need to get the system in place. We can't just rely on technology. We're spending more money on technology. We're getting less results. We have got to start thinking plumbing. The problem that exists in 90% of mid-market growth companies is they've got a plumbing problem. And you need to break through that plumbing to develop a holistic process to solve your problem. Start thinking about growing your business in the same way that organizations think about platforms. You've got a customer acquisition process optimized for the whole, built on a strong economic model, sales model, and business life cycle. Now, remember the 4 pictures that I had of the Super Bowl winning coaches? You see, this is where they look at before they really start thinking about what their playbook's going to be. They want to know who their personnel is, what's their situation, what's the environment. They want to figure out what game are they playing. They figure out the game they're playing. They let that drive their strategy and playbook. And then that drives our tech stack, and our tech stack should be built to accelerate our process. All of this built on a strong basis of data and metrics. The point of all this is, if we want to be able to grow in today's world at a 15 to 25% or higher rate on a sustainable fashion, we have got to build the genius into the system. Here's the problem that most companies have with their overall sales process. They're very, very clear on the beginning of it. They're very, very clear on the end of it. We know when they come in, we know when they go out, but we don't know a whole lot about what's happening in between. And so what I want you guys to do is to establish what I call a what causes sales analysis. Identify what are the waypoints between the beginning of the sale and the end of the sale that have high levels of causation to it. So the way I look at it, and you see I've got a 5-point journey here, what I look to do is I know where the beginning is. I know where the end is. Alrighty, what's that midpoint? What's that key leverage point that has a high level of causation to a sale taking place? So here's the beginning of the journey, the first contact, if you will. Here's the contract being signed. What's that key causation point? And then I want to do it at least one more time between the beginning and that causation point, and between that main leverage point and the end. And if you can identify these 5 points, I'm going to tell you, you're going to be ahead of 98% of companies that are out there. Then you're able to establish the data and metrics. You're not looking to judge the data and metrics from point A to point Z. You just want to judge from here to here, from here to here, and so on. The more that you align your actions to the waypoints of what causes sales to occur, the smarter you're going to be, and the greater the velocity you're going to have. And here's the fun thing. You will go slower at a higher velocity. Our problem today is we're running so fast that we can't make any ground. We're so busy. Our feet are moving so fast. We're forgetting to get length. And the reason is we're running around blind. And if you don't know what those key metrics are, if you don't know what your path to success, what your path to victory is, then you're going to have no choice but to run around really, really fast and hope that something comes through. Those are the 5 strategies to generate far more success from lead generation to sales. And the really good news is not a single one of these strategies is going to cause you to spend money that you weren't necessarily already spending. Right? This is not about go out and start buying ads. Now, here's the thing. Do this and start adding targeted ads and other strategies. You'll amplify those results. Right? But it's about putting what you're doing in order to drive purposeful outcomes. That's going to be the difference of success. Now, I'm really excited to share with you this next slide, because this is something that actually has been years in the making. It's been on our dashboard of things to do, off of it, on it, off of it, on it, off of it. And now not only has it been on it, but it's actually getting launched. It's real. I want to encourage you, if you enjoyed what you saw today, I want to encourage you to join the Sales Genius Network. This page will be going up tomorrow. We did miss the deadline by just a little bit. So if you go there, you are going to get an error, but tomorrow you'll be able to go to Sales Genius Network. I want to encourage you, join the Sales Genius Network. That's where you're going to be able to, our video on how to create and deliver insights is going to be on there. We're going to be providing any number of tools around building your sales process, building your demand generation process. This is going to be a membership-driven part of our website. So you'll end up setting up a username and a password. You'll have exclusive access to content like this. We're going to be running webinars like this that we're going to start charging for people who are not members of the Sales Genius Network. We really do want to build up this network of people who are serious about growing their business, serious about driving better sales outcomes, serious about win-wins for the company and the customer. Like I said, this has been years in the conversation point. Join Sales Genius Network. We're going to be launching a new podcast called the Sales Genius Podcast. We're going to be building out some areas for demand generation, sales operations, as well as sales. We're hoping to make it collaborative in ways like that. But that's the Sales Genius Network is one of our initiatives for 2019 to help make the world a better place, if you will. So join that. You'll get content like this. You'll hear about new things that are happening. I know we've got some clients on here, clients who are going to automatically become members of the Sales Genius Network, so you don't have to worry about it. But again, join us on the Sales Genius Network if you enjoyed what you heard today and you want to be able to get more from that. Thank you again for joining us. It is a beautiful day, and let's go Nats. Until next time, here's to your growth journey.